Gentlemen, all I'm asking you to do now is to witness a demonstration of the possibility of movement within the fourth dimension.
A battered Victorian gentleman stumbles through a door on January 5th, 1900. His clothes torn, his face weathered by impossible journeys. He's been gone for 5 days but lived through 800,000 years. The machine that took him there? Built from a barber's chair, surplus store scraps, and pure imagination. And decades later, that same machine would be found abandoned in a California thrift shop, waiting to be rescued from time itself. When George Powell's The Time Machine premiered in August 1960, it didn't just adapt H.G. Wells' novel, it invented the visual language of time travel for cinema. The spinning disc became an icon, the stop-motion time passage won an Oscar, and the story behind the camera, it's packed with rejected stars, underage actors, breakfast food special effects, and a sequel Hollywood killed. From a makeup artist who studied monkeys at the zoo, to create movie monsters, to a director who died heartbroken when studios turned their backs on him, The Time Machine was built by dreamers who refused to let small budgets crush big visions. These are the facts that time nearly erased. Fact 1. The Australian nobody who became Hollywood's time traveler. Rod Taylor wasn't supposed to be the time traveler. George Powell originally envisioned distinguished British actors Paul Scofield, Michael Rennie, or James Mason. These were established, theater-trained performers who could sell the intellectual weight. But Powell changed his mind. Over numerous lunches, the Hungarian-born director found himself drawn to Taylor, a relatively unknown Australian who'd spent the 1950s in supporting roles. Powell saw something different: youth, athleticism, idealism. Someone who could make you believe this inventor would run toward the future, not just theorize about it. It was a gamble. This was Taylor's first leading role in a feature film. MGM had doubts, but Powell trusted his instincts, and Taylor brought an energy that made George Wells feel like an adventurer, not a lecturer. The role skyrocketed Taylor's career. 3 years later, Alfred Hitchcock cast him as the lead in The Birds. But here's the twist. Just before The Time Machine, Taylor was offered James Bond in Dr. No. He turned it down, believing the character was beneath him. Watching Sean Connery's success, Taylor later admitted he'd tear his hair out every time a Bond film became a hit. That one decision changed cinema history twice over. Fact 2. The son who made it all happen. H.G. Wells believed The Time Machine would make a compelling film, but he died in 1946, never seeing it realized. The story might have ended there without his son. Frank Wells saw George Powell's 1953 adaptation of his father's War of the Worlds. The film's spectacle convinced Frank that Powell was the only director who could honor his father's vision. He reached out personally, giving his blessing, but Hollywood didn't want it. Paramount Studios had no interest. Powell and screenwriter David Duncan shopped their screenplay around without success, until Powell journeyed to England in 1958 to film Tom Thumb. There he befriended Matthew Raymond, head of MGM's British studio. Raymond helped Powell assemble a budget. When producer Sol Siegel screened Tom Thumb and saw Powell's unique talent for film fantasy, he greenlit The Time Machine. A son's faith in his father's work had finally brought the future to life. Fact 3. It was shot in 29 days. Here's a detail that's been confused in retrospectives. The Time Machine's live-action scenes were filmed from May 25 through June 30, 1959, a 37-day calendar period. But the actual shooting took 29 days. Back then, and even today, movies usually take months to wrap the shootings. This shows how disciplined George Powell's operation was. The crew worked with military precision, filming multiple scenes per day, jumping between Victorian house sets and the futuristic Aloy world without pause. When natural light faded on outdoor dome sets, they'd rush to indoor backlot London streets. Powell's animation background taught him that timing was everything. He knew exactly what the audience needed to see and what could be skipped. Against the odds, they captured an epic that felt 3 times as ambitious as its modest schedule suggested. This wasn't a luxurious production, it was a sprint through time itself. Fact 4. The prop that 2 legends built together. The Time Machine itself, that glorious brass and mahogany contraption, was a collaboration between MGM art director Bill Ferrari and Hua Ming Chang. Ferrari conceived the sleigh-like design with the massive rotating disc, but Chang brought it to life, sculpting details, engineering mechanics, making it look like something that could actually bend time. The barber's chair seat, the control panel scavenged from surplus stores, the brass plate engraved with H. George Wells, merging author and director. Chang was a sculptor struck by polio at age 31. The disease left him disabled but never slowed his creativity. He'd already worked on Spartacus and The King and I. Here's what most don't know. After The Time Machine, Chang designed the most iconic props in Star Trek history. the flip-top communicator that inspired cell phones, the tricorder, the Gorn costume. When you think of Star Trek's visual language, you're thinking of Hua Chang's genius. But on The Time Machine, he received no screen credit due to union complications. Partners Gene Warren and Tim Barr won the Oscar for Best Special Effects, while Chang worked in anonymity. Film historian Bob Burns, who later restored the prop, said Chang never complained. He was the most humble, gentle man I've ever known. Chang died in 2003, but his legacy travels through time. Fact 5. The teenage star who broke MGM's rules. Ivet Mimieux was only 17 when production began. By law, she wasn't supposed to work a full shooting schedule, but she did anyway. MGM's casting reportedly bent the rules, keeping her involvement under the radar. She turned 18 during the shoot. But here's the real story. Mimieux's contract option had just been dropped by MGM. The studio didn't want her. She had virtually no acting experience. During her screen test, George Pal saw something others missed. An innocent persona that perfectly matched the dreamlike Eloy world. MGM initially turned her down again. Pal fought for her. She was nervous, inexperienced, still learning. Rod Taylor later said she seemed like kind of a strange hippie child. As filming progressed, she improved dramatically. By the end, producers realized her earliest scenes no longer matched her later work, so they reshot her initial sequences. That decision paid off. The film's success made Mimieux one of MGM's most popular ingenues of the early 1960s, starring in Where the Boys Are, The Light in the Piazza, and later, Disney's The Black Hole. For a girl rejected twice by the studio, she proved the value of taking chances on unknowns. Fact 6. The budget Hollywood swore was impossible. Everyone says The Time Machine cost under $1 million. MGM's records show the actual budget was between $827,000 and $829,000. Even in 1960, that was astonishingly low. Major studio films spent 3 to 5 times that. George Pal had to stretch every dollar. He reused sets from older MGM productions. He relied on matte paintings instead of location shoots, miniatures instead of full-scale builds. The lava destroying London, oatmeal dyed red with detergent and clay. The clouds drifting overhead, milk poured through water tanks filmed in slow motion. The future dome, built outdoors with no roof, using California sunlight instead of expensive studio lights. The miracle, the film earned $2.61 million worldwide, $1.61 million in the US and Canada, another million internationally. MGM's ledgers show a profit of $245,000. Not a fortune, but solid proof that smart filmmaking could beat big spending. Pal made the film look like a major epic. Audiences never knew they were watching Hollywood thrift store brilliance. Fact 7. The breakfast that became a disaster. The molten lava sequence when atomic war triggers volcanic eruptions swallowing London looks terrifyingly real. But that bubbling destruction was cooked oatmeal. The effects crew mixed cooked oats with red dye, adding dish detergent and powdered clay for texture. Under studio lights, it genuinely looked like molten rock. But there was a problem: it started fermenting. The concoction released steam and bubbles, which helped sell the illusion of heat. But it also began rotting under hot lights, filling the soundstage with burned breakfast buffet smell. The crew worked fast, capturing shots before the lava spoiled completely. It was low-budget ingenuity at its finest, turning something cheap into one of the film's most memorable disaster scenes. Even today, practical effects artists point to The Time Machine's oatmeal lava as a masterclass in creative problem-solving. Fact 8. The Oscar that almost forgot its real heroes. The Time Machine won the 1961 Academy Award for Best Special Effects, and Gene Warren and Tim Barr accepted it. But about 10 other uncredited artists worked on those effects. Hua Chang, who designed the Morlocks and co-created the Time Machine prop, wasn't listed due to the same union complications I mentioned before. He never complained. According to Bob Burns, Chang simply didn't care about glory. He cared about the work. Then there's the stop-motion crew. The time-lapse photography winning the Oscar required thousands of individual frames with microscopic adjustments. Flowers bloomed and withered. Mannequins in shop windows changed outfits as fashion evolved. Sunlight flickered across George's house as the world aged. The team used milk poured through water tanks for clouds, layered exposures for motion, and miniature sets lit with surgical precision. Every second represented hours of painstaking labor. When the film premiered, audiences gasped. They'd never seen time rendered this way. The innovation earned the Oscar, built on artists whose names history nearly forgot. Fact 9. The painted tree that grew before your eyes. That mesmerizing shot where a tree branch grows at accelerated rate, while George moves forward in time. It looks like cutting-edge stop motion, but it wasn't. According to effects designers Hua Chang, Tim Barr, and Gene Warren, that sequence was actually a painting by artist Bill Brace. The canvas was photographed with a locked-off camera, one frame at a time, as Brace progressively rendered the growth in painstaking detail. Imagine the precision. Brace had to add tiny brushstrokes between each photograph, building the image gradually, so when played at 24 frames per second, it created organic growth illusion. One wrong stroke, one canvas shift, and the entire sequence would be ruined. It's a perfect example of how the Time Machine's effects team thought outside the box. When conventional stop motion was too complex or expensive, they found another way, one requiring an artist's steady hand and endless patience. Fact 10. Color-coded time travel. Cinematographer Paul Vogel faced a unique challenge. How do you show time's passage through a skylight without actually having days pass? His solution was ingenious. Vogel created a lighting scheme using colored gels, clear for daylight, pink for dawn, amber for dusk, blue for night. These gels were synchronized on a 7-foot circular shutter, rotating at varying speeds, to simulate the sun's movement through the time traveler's greenhouse roof as the machine hurtled into the future. The system allowed cycling through an entire day in seconds, creating the flickering light effect that makes George's time travel feel visceral and real. Combined with stop-motion flowers blooming and dying, the effect was mesmerizing. Vogel, who had won an Oscar for Battleground in 1950, brought that same technical excellence to the Time Machine. His lighting didn't just illuminate, it became a character marking the relentless passage of centuries. If the story of how the Time Machine was made is already blowing your mind, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me which behind-the-scenes secret shocked you most. And subscribe if you want more deep dives like this, because we're only halfway through and the strangest facts are still ahead. Fact 11. The voice you heard but never saw. Remember the talking rings in the abandoned museum? Those eerie, monotone narrations explaining humanity's fall. That voice belonged to Paul Frees, one of Hollywood's most prolific voice actors, and he wasn't credited. Frees had an instantly recognizable baritone that made him one of the era's most in-demand vocal performers. He'd already voiced the Forbidden Planet computer and would become the voice of Boris Badenov in Rocky and Bullwinkle. But on the Time Machine, he worked uncredited, delivering those chilling historical fragments haunting the Eloy's forgotten past. George Pal wanted the narration to sound detached, emotionless, as if history itself had lost feeling after centuries of decay. Frees nailed it. In just minutes, those talking rings convey more about civilization's collapse than pages of dialogue ever could. Fact 12. Alan Young's double life. Alan Young played David Philby, George's loyal friend who appears twice, once as the Victorian gentleman, and again as his own son, James Philby, in the war-torn 1940s and 1960s. It's brilliant casting, reinforcing the film's themes of time and continuity. But here's what makes it better. Young was a radio star before camera work. Born in England in 1919, he moved to Scotland and Canada as a sickly child. Unable to play outside, he glued himself to radio, breaking into broadcasting at age 13. By 17, he was writing and performing for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. His show became so popular in the US that CBS brought him to America in 1944. But Young is best remembered for what came next, Mr. Ed. Starting in 1961, he spent 5 years talking to a horse on television's most beloved sitcoms. Later, he became Scrooge McDuck's voice for Disney, a role he'd played for decades. Despite all that, Young said the Time Machine remained special. In 1993, he returned to the role one last time for a documentary mini-sequel, reuniting with Rod Taylor after 33 years. Even time couldn't break the bond between George and Philby. Fact 13. The monkey house that built the Morlocks. Creating the Morlocks, the film's terrifying underground creatures, required more than imagination. Makeup designer William Tuttle needed inspiration, so he went to the San Diego Zoo. Tuttle spent hours at the monkey house, studying how primates moved, how their fur caught light, how their faces contorted in aggression. He took detailed notes and sketches, using them to design the Morlocks' distinctive look. Green latex skin, grotesque masks, and fur that seemed simultaneously human and bestial. But Tuttle's masterstroke was the eyes. He embedded tiny light bulbs into facial masks, creating an eerie electric eye effect. And here's the brilliant part. Each actor playing a Morlock held a small switch connected by thin wires concealed in rubber suits. They could control their own eye lights, turning them on and off to create unpredictable, menacing flickers during scenes. The result was so effective it influenced horror makeup for years. Tuttle would later win an honorary Oscar for Seven Faces of Dr. Lau in 1965, the first makeup artist ever honored by the Academy. But the Morlocks remained his most iconic creation. The design even inspired the Twilight Zone's Eye of the Beholder. When that episode's makeup supervisor needed to create pig-faced normal people, he went to Tuttle's department and asked to see the Morlock pieces, using them as a template. From A Day at the Zoo to cinema history, that's the power of observation and innovation. Fact 14. The Cold War nightmare hidden in plain sight. George stops his machine on August 19, 1966, just 6 years in the future from the film's 1960 release, and witnesses London destroyed by atomic war. For audiences in 1960, this wasn't just science fiction, it was their worst fear made real. The Cold War was escalating. The Cuban Missile Crisis was 2 years away. Nuclear annihilation felt less like if and more like when. George Pal knew this. He used the sequence to tap directly into that anxiety. The scene is short but chilling. Air raid sirens, borrowed from Forbidden Planet, wail across the city. James Philby shouts warnings about an atomic satellite. People rush into fallout shelters. Then the explosion, the volcano, the end of civilization in seconds. Pal didn't dwell on it. He didn't need to. The audience's own nightmares filled the gaps. H.G. Wells wrote the novel as a Victorian critique of class systems. George Pal updated it for the atomic age and made it even more unsettling. Fact 15. The set built over a parking lot. The Eloy's Great Hall, where George first encounters the strange, passive people of the future, was built directly over an MGM studio parking lot. And the production didn't bother with floor covering. If you look closely during these scenes, you can see white, parallel, and perpendicular lines painted on the floor, parking space markings bleeding through. The table arrangements don't conform to any logical pattern because they were positioned to hide the lines beneath. According to a special effects veteran on set, this was cost-cutting taken to an absurd degree. Instead of building a proper floor or even covering the asphalt, they just filmed it, and for 60 years most didn't notice. It's one of those delightful production quirks that makes low-budget filmmaking charming. A reminder that even in a movie about the distant future, you're really watching actors perform over where someone parked their Chevrolet that morning. Fact 16. The outdoor paradise built without a ceiling. The Eloy Dome world glows with warmth that feels almost otherworldly. There's a reason. The dome sets were built outdoors with no ceiling. This cost-cutting decision became a visual triumph. Instead of expensive studio lighting, Paul used natural California sunlight. Cinematographer Paul Vogel scheduled scenes around the sun's movement, chasing that perfect golden hour glow. The crew used mirrors to bounce light into shaded areas, creating dreamlike brightness that made Eloy civilization look peaceful and surreal. When clouds rolled in, production paused. Light continuity had to stay exact between shots, but the patience paid off. That artificial paradise bathed in warm natural light was really just smart scheduling and good weather. It's one of the simplest yet most effective lighting tricks ever captured on film, and it cost George Paul almost nothing. Fact 17. Forbidden Planet's hand-me-downs. When George stops in 1966 and witnesses nuclear war, the air raid wardens rushing people into shelters wear distinctive, futuristic uniforms. Those costumes weren't designed for the time machine, they were recycled from Forbidden Planet from 1956. But that's not the only connection. In the abandoned museum where talking rings explain humanity's downfall, a careful eye spots an astrolabe, the navigation instrument from Forbidden Planet's starship, sitting among ancient artifacts. This was standard practice in the studio era. Props and costumes were expensive, so they were stored in vast warehouses and reused across productions. It's a reminder that Hollywood magic often came from creative recycling rather than unlimited budgets. Fact 18. The steps that time traveled. Those majestic steps leading to the Eloy Dining Hall, they have their own Hollywood history. Originally constructed for the 1944 film Kismet, those steps became one of MGM's most frequently reused set pieces. After The Time Machine, they appeared in countless productions, most notably in several Twilight Zone episodes, where they served as everything from alien temples to futuristic government buildings. They are arguably the most time-traveled steps in cinema history, appearing in dozens of different eras across decades of filmmaking. It's a perfect metaphor for the time machine itself, something built for one purpose, endlessly repurposed, always finding new life in different contexts. Fact 19. The prop that went on a journey worthy of its name. After filming wrapped, the time machine prop sat abandoned in an MGM warehouse, collecting dust. By the 1970s, it was in terrible shape. The brass disc dented, the seat torn, parts missing. Then, around 1975, film historian and collector Bob Burns got a tip. Someone thought they'd seen the time machine in a thrift shop in Orange, California. Burns rushed over, and there it was, the most iconic movie prop of its era, sitting in a junk store, battered and broken. Burns had been outbid at the 1970 MGM auction. Now, 5 years later, fate gave him a second chance. He bought what remained and immediately called George Pal. The director was thrilled. He gave Burns the original blueprints and restoration began. Burns assembled a dream team, a young Dennis Muren, who'd later win Oscars at Industrial Light and Magic, DC, Fontana, one of Star Trek's original writers, Tom Sherman and Michael Miner, masters of model making and effects. Together, they spent 4 weeks meticulously restoring every component, matching the original MGM color palette, rebuilding the control panel with vintage bulbs and switches, repairing the massive rotating disc. In 1976, Burns unveiled a restored time machine at his annual Halloween show. George Pal was there, seeing his creation whole again. The prop went on to appear in Carl Sagan's Cosmos, a cameo in Gremlins, and countless museum exhibits. It had truly become a time traveler, surviving decades of neglect to shine again in a new century. Film historians call it one of the greatest prop restorations in cinema history. The sequel that broke George Pal's heart. George Pal never stopped dreaming about a sequel. He envisioned a story where the time traveler returns to the future with Weena, traveling even farther forward to witness Earth's end. Giant crabs on dying seas, a blood-red sun hanging low, humans hiding from massive insects. In August 1960, just after the film opened to acclaim and box office success, MGM scheduled a sequel for January 1961. It was called Return of the Time Traveler. Rod Taylor and Ivet Mimieux were set to return, but the sequel never happened. MGM's management changed. Priorities shifted toward musicals and big historical dramas. Pal's passion projects were suddenly seen as too niche, too risky. He tried shopping the script around Hollywood for years. Nothing stuck. Pal died in 1980, never having made the sequel. Rod Taylor later said, Pal tried to schlep around town to do The Time Machine 2 and a few other movies, and they told him, "You've had your time, George. It's all over." I honestly believe he died of a broken heart. In 1993, screenwriter David Duncan, who'd written the original 1960 film, penned a short mini-sequel for a documentary called Time Machine: The Journey Back. Rod Taylor, Alan Young, and Whit Bissell reprised their roles one last time, 33 years later. In the scene, George tries to convince Philby not to board the plane that will kill him in World War I. Philby refuses, choosing duty over survival. It's a bittersweet coda to a story that deserved more. Bonus fact: the mystery of the 3 missing books. At the very end, after George has returned to 1900 and left again to rejoin Weena in the future, his housekeeper, Mrs. Watchett, notices something. 3 books are missing from George's library. Philby speculates that George took them to help rebuild civilization in the far future, but the film never reveals which books he chose. H.G. Wells didn't specify them in the novel either. It's one of cinema's most enduring mysteries. What knowledge would you bring to the future if you could only carry 3 volumes? Fans have debated this for over 60 years. Some say the Bible, Shakespeare, and an encyclopedia. Others argue for practical guides, medicine, engineering, agriculture. The beauty is that the answer says more about us than about George. It's a small detail, but it's one of those perfect storytelling touches that stays with you long after the credits roll. What 3 books would you take? The Time Machine wasn't just another sci-fi adventure. It was a glimpse into what the genre could become when imagination mattered more than money, when dreamers refused to let budgets crush their visions. George Pal, Rod Taylor, Ivet Mimieux, Hua Chang, William Tuttle, and so many others poured their souls into making a classic come true, stretching $829,000 into a visual epic that earned an Oscar and inspired generations. The sequel George Pal dreamed of never happened. He died believing Hollywood had forgotten him. But his vision didn't fade. It traveled forward, influencing every time travel story that followed, proving that great imagination never truly grows old. Every spin of that golden disc was a step toward the future of storytelling itself. And more than 65 years later, the machine still ticks. So have you watched The Time Machine yet? Tell us in the comments what you think about it, which of these facts you already knew, and what surprised you most. If you haven't, go watch it when you get the chance, and then come back to tell us about it. And if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into films that changed everything. Thanks for watching.